Harris, good morning to you. Over the next several weeks, we expect to hear more about how some of Florida's political elite are making their way into a second Trump term. The latest news, as you mentioned, happening overnight with Fox learning that Florida Senator Marco Rubio expected to head up the State Department. Now, Rubio has been in the Senate since 2011, serving on both the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Intelligence Committee. And while he was once a Trump critic, he has certainly embraced Trump over the last few years, especially when it comes to continued U.S. support for Israel. While we don't know when a nomination might actually be submitted, one Democratic senator already appears on board. John Fetterman of Pennsylvania posting today, unsurprisingly, the other team's pick will have political differences than my own. That being said, my colleague Rubio is a strong choice, and I look forward to voting for his confirmation. Trump also planning to pick South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem to head the Department of Homeland Security. She was once considered a potential VP pick for Trump, but she fell out of contention after admitting in a book she had shot and killed her dog, who she claimed was unruly. Trump is also urging lawmakers in Washington to move quickly on his nominees by confirming them via recess appointment. That would prevent any drawn-out debate over the procedure. We're hearing from Florida Senator Rick Scott, running for Majority Leader, who says he's on board with the idea.
We had a great Tuesday. We can all be way more excited. But if we don't have the right leader in the Senate, then what's going to happen is all the things that Donald Trump wants to do is going to get bogged down, not going to happen. Nominees won't get done. So I am absolutely committed to do whatever it takes to get his nominees confirmed and get his agenda passed.
While the focus here is today on Florida, Harris, tomorrow the president-elect will be in Washington, and we've learned he's expected to also stop by Capitol Hill to meet with lawmakers as they get ready for a number of big decisions ahead. Harris.
Mark, great to see you. Thank you. In focus now, Ben Domenech, Fox News contributor and editor-at-large of The Spectator. First of all, your response to some of the choices here by the president-elect.
Well, I think it's a very strong list of names there, Harris, and I think that what we're seeing here is that, this is a very, small C Catholic kind of approach to running the cabinet, which is saying that you're going to pull from a lot of different corners of the Republican coalition that the president has expanded so dramatically. These are known names, they're reliable names, and they're names with government experience. One of the things we saw in the first Trump term was that there were a lot of people who ended up in jobs because while they had impressive resumes, they may not have come from the world of government. They may not be familiar with it. People like Rex Tillerson, for instance, who ended up running into difficulty when they had to adapt to the restrictions that are in place when you go into government and have to deal with the surrounding bureaucracy and all of the different ways that they try to, prevent you from achieving the president's agenda, as we are all familiar with by now. And I think that what we are getting here is a good mix of ideology and experience. People who are going to be able to navigate that world with a foreknowledge of what those bureaucratic hurdles are going to be, how to overcome them. And I think overall what you see there is a sign of strength when it comes to backing Israel, pushing back against Iran, pushing back against China, and really establishing American strength in the world again. And when it comes to the names, Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, this is clearly going to be an administration that prioritizes the border and is going to be tough on Mexico and on the cartels that have made it such Swiss cheese over the past 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Swiss cheese. I wrote that down, a mix of ideology and experience. Maybe we add in knowledge of who the toughest political players are with their games as well. So people are going to come in and they're going to be fresh and ready for, well, as Kamala Harris has said, the fight ahead. Border officials tell Fox News that morale is surging among border officials after Trump's victory. Well, yeah, they see some daylight now. Here's a quote. It's a total 180. Troops are finally feeling like the sun is coming out after a very long storm. Another, morale is even higher than the first time he won, and they know they can get the bad guys now. But we've also heard some Democrat state governors are promising to put up a wall, yes, a wall, of resistance against Trump's border policy.
If the Trump administration requests it, would the Massachusetts State Police assist in mass deportations?
No, absolutely not.
You come for my people, you come through me.
We're pragmatic, and we will stand firm.
Anybody want to tell Governor Pritzker that the people voted for Trump in many instances, some of his very own people? So who's he talking about protecting or fighting there, Ben?
Well, he's talking about protecting people who aren't Americans, which I just think is absolutely ridiculous. You know, this is a situation that the Biden administration and the Biden-Harris administration brought on us through their terrible border policies, which were intentional, I believe, as many others do, in the first several years, and only changed when it became politically untenable for Democrats to defend how ridiculously out of control our border became. Alejandro Mayorkas to Kristi Noem is about as big of a change as you could possibly have, in any corner of government. And so I think that you're going to see the Trump administration be very serious in terms of their approach to this. And look, again, it's kind of building on the experience of the last time around. They know how much Democrats resisted the types of approaches that they had. And while it's good to come from outside and have the attitude of an outsider, it's also good to speak from experience and knowledge of what they're going to try to do to prevent you from achieving things for the American people. And the American people showed on Election Day that they care deeply about the security of the border. It's why you saw such a sweeping victory for the former president, and it's one of the key reasons he's headed back to the White House.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a distance between the past and what's coming in terms of who's chosen. You couldn't be more different than the Vice President Kamala Harris, who just lost the way that you pointed it out there, much in part over this issue. And now Tom Homan comes in as the border czar. I mean, that is opposite in fact. And as you heard, garnering a lot of support from the troops at the Border Patrol. Well, federal employees who worked during the President-elect Trump's first administration are reportedly scared and anxious about his return to the White House.
We are in a new dystopian hellscape. That is from a federal employee via text message last night, and that is the mindset of many of the 2 million federal workers anticipating Donald Trump's return to office. As you know, Trump has obsessed on the campaign trail about the idea of federal workers being agents of the deep state working against him and his agenda. Now, some of the employees who lived through the first Trump administration say they are experiencing PTSD.
Yeah, you heard that right. They say that they have PTSD because they're upset about the new president. Well, if that is not enough, the State Department reportedly is holding coping sessions for those employees distraught over the election results. The Free Beacon obtained this internal email, quote, "Change is a constant in our lives, but it can often bring about stress and uncertainty. Join us for an insightful webinar where we delve into effective stress management techniques to help you navigate these challenging times." Critics are going off. This alone tells you why the Dems are in their current form, must lose again and again until they fully become functioning adults once more. Another, these people just need to grow up. They are not cut out for a job at state. So that voice that I went into explaining, my mother said I should have been the announcer at those webinars. I don't know. But what I do know is the kind of help that they need is to keep their jobs. Why don't they just do the work?
Well, I think that, doing the work is always a challenge for America's bureaucrats, especially in Washington, D.C. Perhaps they can get to work, making a room for themselves with rubber and soft play. Maybe they should distribute a packet to deal with this that includes a blanket, some warm milk, and a nice binky, or something like that. It's absolutely absurd, Harris, but it's also something that I think is one of the reasons why they understand that this time around, as unsexy as it sounds, civil service reform is going to be something that this administration actually does, and I think does seriously. They've been planning for it for a while. It was one of the things they tried to do right at the end of the last term, and changing the way that bureaucrats are treated, especially some of the top bureaucrats who deserve to be hired and fired at the pleasure of the president. That's something that needs to happen, and frankly, I think it's going to happen early in this administration, and it's going to make a huge difference in the kind of resistance that we see these bureaucrats put up.
Yeah. All true. Ben Domenech, thank you. Great to have you always.
Good to be with you.
President-elect Trump will face a host of global challenges now, from wars in Ukraine and the Middle East to threats from China, North Korea, Iran, and of course our open southern and northern border to the... We don't talk much about the border to the north. What Trump's cabinet picks so far tell us about how he will handle foreign policy. And blame game continuing for Democrats now in the throes of an identity crisis. Whether all the sudden introspection can fix a very fractured party.